I bought this mostly new laptop for $47.96. That is what we in the business call cheap as shit. But the real question is, if you're paying less than 50 bucks for an open box laptop, there's no way that this thing could be remotely usable, right? Well, you guessed it. We're gonna find out today. And of course, whenever I talk about a PC here, I can't help but compare it to available Macs at the same price, but for 50 bucks, it is slim pickings. In fact, this looks to be one of the only machines that would actually be viable. It's a 13-inch mid-2009 MacBook Pro that appears to be fully complete. All those other listings were missing things like hard drives and RAM, but this one is an intact and albeit a little bit rough around the edges MacBook that even comes with a charger. So keep in mind as we're talking about this laptop that if you wanted to buy a Mac, this is what you'd be looking at. The unboxing experience is truly incredible, I think. Boom. Laptop right on top. We pull that out. Boom, charger. That's it. We're done. Is there anything under here? No. No instruction manual. That's all you get. And you know what? That's all you need. So there's your charger. There's your $50 laptop. It's honestly not the ugliest thing that I've ever laid eyes on. Here we have a couple of speaker holes down at the bottom, but there's no vents. I'm assuming this is gonna be a fanless system. Let's go ahead and open it up. That is not one-handed operation, let me tell you. So there we have it. We got some plastic, fantastic bezels. Intel inside, that's right. We have an Intel Celeron 3450, I think. Yeah, it's a 3450, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigabyte eMMC storage. Now, the thing that's really curious to me, we'll go ahead and turn this thing on, is I wanted to know who this is for. Well, the box says Maestro Education Notebooks, so that seems to indicate that they're targeting the education market. But I went on Amazon to look at some of their results, and honestly, it's super... Oops. Hey, it's a good thing I've got the Case-Q Magic Stand case on, protecting my phone from falls exactly like that. The Magic Stand case is a super innovative blend between a MagSafe compatible charging case and a kickstand case. The magnetic charging ring flips out from the back of the phone, allowing you to prop your phone up in portrait or landscape orientations, and you can collapse it right back into place and use it with a MagSafe charger. That is the kind of versatility that I like to see in a phone case. They come in a wide variety of colors to match the finishes of the latest iPhones, and if you want to get 10% off, you can check out the link in the description below. Now, let's get back into some of these Amazon reviews for this thing because it honestly opened my eyes to a whole world out there that I didn't even know about. So I was expecting these reviews to be full of parents talking about buying it for their kids, but I was completely wrong. The very first review is from someone who is buying this for radio gear. And that was actually a trend that I noticed quite a bit. If we scroll down here, there's another one talking about several members of their ham radio club purchasing this computer and they all are satisfied with its performance. Now, the one right below it talks about how it came with the box seal broken and a Trojan horse installed on it. So maybe we should check if I have anything. So, why is it's muted? Let's see how the speakers sound. No audio output device is installed. Okay, so this didn't come with drivers. So the very first thing that I noticed setting this up is the trackpad is slightly abysmal. It feels like a trackpad that was made out of not trackpad material. Like it's too rough almost. Let's open up Edge and test out the keyboard here. YouTube.com. Okay, key travel is very shallow. The feedback is not great, but I will say this keyboard deck is pretty rigid. I was expecting it to sort of feel like typing on a piece of tin foil. You're just kind of punching holes in it all the time, but it's surprisingly rigid. Apparently, a lot of people are talking about removing an LTE card and using an SSD in the M2 slot. So I was not aware of this because, again, I just saw this very plain box. I really didn't know anything about the features of this machine. So I think we gotta open it up and find out. All right, so let's see what we got here. Looks like a pretty standard setup with a couple of Phillips head screws. And while I'm pulling these out, I figure this is as good a time as ever to tell you guys about my upcoming event. The day after WWDC, I'm gonna be hosting Genius Bar Goes Dark. You can kind of think about this as a big get together with a bunch of tech enthusiasts to discuss what Apple's releasing at WWDC this year. We've got some YouTuber friends that are gonna be there. Ken from Computer Clan, he's gonna be there. Quinn from Snazzy Labs is gonna be there. And the event is sponsored by Clean My Mac X, which has been a huge supporter of the channel. They made this entire thing possible, and they are the best way to keep your Mac clean, protected, and running at full speed. Heck, I might even bring this laptop and give it away to one of you guys. So if you want this laptop, let me know in the comments below and show up to Genius Bar Goes Dark, Regency Ballroom in San Francisco on June 6th. It's gonna be a ton of fun. Now, the final screws coming out here, although not all of them are actually falling out of the thing. There they go. Wow, the seam to get in this bottom case here is really tiny. I will give them credit. The fit and finish on this laptop is surprisingly good for 50 bucks. There we go. Look at that. What a glorious, glorious little machine. Very simple, very straightforward, as these machines often are, and a surprising amount of black electrical tape being used here. Curiously enough, this ribbon cable is actually too long, so it looks like they taped it down. This is our I/O board over here. So on this side, we have a headphone jack, USB, and a micro SD card slot, which is an interesting choice. Then on the main board, we have, of course, our DC in, a USB-A port, and a micro HDMI, which is not a choice that I would have made, but I guess they didn't really have a lot of room on this machine. The reviews were all talking about the M2 slot. I don't see one. I think we're gonna have to keep taking this thing apart if we're gonna figure this out. Oh, I've cut my fingernail opening it. Oh, look at all those connectors hiding under there. What's this big one? All right, there's our display cable. Over here, this looks to be our wireless antenna that we can unplug. Battery is out. Well, that's easy enough. So, aha, this makes sense now. We've got our keyboard connector over here. We've got a trackpad ZIF connector over here. And our speaker wires are just running across the whole machine. They both connect to a single terminal there. Oh my goodness, look at this tiny little microphone. That's so cute. All right, the only thing left to disconnect now is our other I/O board. And now we should be able to just pull this little tiny board out. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's so little. But I am confused because I definitely am not seeing an M.2 slot. I mean, this looks like a pretty standard board. I would wager that you could find this exact same logic board in a bunch of these little devices. One thing I am surprised by is this metal keyboard backplate. It is pretty rigid and it seems to be plastic welded into this case, so replacing the keyboard wouldn't be easy, but that's probably why it's so relatively rigid compared to the rest of the machine. I mean, look at that. We don't even have a logic board or a bottom case in it, and it's still got decent stability. But I'm definitely starting to think that I don't have the same version of this laptop that other people were talking about on those Amazon reviews, because there's definitely no M.2 slot in here, although this does kind of look like where you would mount one, so maybe this empty space in my machine is populated in that other more expensive version. I do want to know how this machine performs. It's totally fanless. It's using a Celeron 3450. It's not the most modern or powerful processor, obviously, but it should be decently usable. So let's put this machine back together and find out. So remember that part where I said that this CPU should be decently usable? That I was wrong about that. 798, that's our Cinebench score, but it's not really the score that concerns me as much as it is what happened during the test. I think there might be something wrong with this computer because It's making a noise. Something is hissing and fizzing inside this computer after running Cinebench. And it's getting real slow. It's getting a little warm down there, but why is it? That is so weird. So I'm not exactly sure what that sound was. My hunch would be coil whine because it does have a copper heatsink. So that is the most optimistic scenario. I was a little worried that I was boiling the thermal pads that are in this thing. But more so the issue with this laptop is I think it is too cheap. I think there is such a thing as saving too much money. And when you sacrifice this much to get a laptop to this price point, I just think it's not worth it. This is basically just a piece of e-waste waiting to happen. Now, we saw in the Amazon reviews that some people found it sufficient for checking emails or for ham radio stuff. And that's great. I'm sure some people will be able to get a limited amount of use out of it. It does physically function. I'm able to search on YouTube and very, very slowly click my way through to a video. Now, granted, this is not, so we are really pushing the limits of this seller on just loading the YouTube AdSense ad. But I mean, look, it does play a video. What resolution is this? Oh, we're only in 720p. Let's go up to 4K. It doesn't even have a 4K screen. Those black levels are atrocious and the viewing angles are terrible. You can see colors shifting even when you're looking at it straight on. So yes, it does physically work and you can see it is capable of playing back video. So if nothing else, you could give this to your kids, load some movies on it, and have a cheap playback machine. However, the problem that I have with laptops like this isn't necessarily that they're completely useless, right? The reviews mentioned ham radio, email, and we're watching videos on it. And it is capable of doing those three things. The question is for how long and at what total cost, not in dollars, but in e-waste. This is basically just a hunk of plastic. And even though it might have some amount of functionality now, I think we'd all agree that this is not going to be as long-lasting of a device as something like a MacBook Air. And obviously this is a lot more expensive now. I don't mean to compare them, but remember earlier we found a Core 2 Duo MacBook Pro on eBay for the same price. I'm not necessarily saying that you should buy a MacBook Pro instead of this, but what I am saying is that MacBook Pro is 14 years old. Do you really see this still having any life in it in 14 years? I don't think so. And the problem is, this is just inviting a big piece of plastic to get thrown away. Because if I were someone that bought this, I would maybe be able to use it for, let's generously say, 4 years. And after that amount of time, it is so slow and worthless that it's not even worth putting on eBay. I spent 50 bucks on it. What am I gonna get $10 back? At that point, people are just going to throw them away. I think there's a bit of a sad irony that recycling centers all across the world are literally overwhelmed with perfectly decent, modern, usable laptops that are being thrown away by businesses and schools. And out here, yet the rest of us can't access that ostensibly free, perfectly adequate supply of electronics. Instead, we have to go and spend 50 bucks to acquire some e-waste. I don't know, it just feels weird knowing what's out there in these recycling centers and then seeing that you have to pay money for something like this. I don't know. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.